Page 451, we're going to finish up talking about area of circles. So just a quick reminder about some formulas before we get going here. Formulas on your reference sheet. Our lesson is on area of circles. Area of circle is equal to pi times the radius squared. Another couple of formulas that we might need for this lesson involves circumference. So we had one formula, circumference is pi times diameter. We also had circumference is 2 times pi times the radius. So these will be three formulas, again, all on your reference sheet, that we'll be looking at as we do some of these problems. So if we look at the try it, part A, how far away can a person live from a radio station? And here it's broadcast if the signal covers a circular area of 40,000 square miles. Write your answer as a whole number. Okay, so if we think about what's happening here, we'll be looking at how far they live away from the radio station. So kind of what's happening is we have our radio station. We have our radio station, and then we have people that are a certain distance away from that. And then this whole thing is an area of 40,000 square miles, is basically what's happening. So we think about this, we know what the area is. Which is 40,000. And we're just going to estimate pi to be 3.14. And we don't know what our radius is. So that's just substituting into that equation. If we were going to solve this, if we were going to try and figure out what our radius is, what would we want to do first? So we would need to divide by 3.14. We're trying to get the radius, we're trying to get r by itself. They're multiplying, so we're going to do the opposite operation. We're going to divide. Now when we do that, this may not necessarily come out as the nicest number in the world, and indeed it doesn't. But when you get that answer, we're going to leave that whole answer on your calculator. So 12,738.8535. Okay, we're not quite done here. That's the radius squared. We're trying to find the radius. So how would we find out what our radius is now? Square root, good. We get rid of a square by taking the square root. Technically, when we take the square root, we talked about the other day, we should put a plus or minus there. There's technically two possible answers, even though we know for a radius here of a circle, it's a distance, cannot be negative. Okay? So what you can do in order to work that out on your calculator, to do the square root, remember square root, you've got to hit second and then your x squared button in order to get the square root. So if you had that long answer on your calculator, what you could do, you hit second and then square root, and then you could hit second and the negative button, and that'll say ANS. which stands for answer, which means it's going to take the square root of the last answer that you had. Okay, and then they're wanting us to round this to the nearest whole number. So when you take the square root of that to the nearest whole number would be...
Do you want me to say the whole number including the decimal or just...
Nearest whole number.
Oh, okay. That would be 113?
113. Okay. Now, this is kind of a question mark here. It's about 112.86 roughly. So normally on a regular problem we would say this is closer to 113 than 112. We'll round it to 113. This problem we're talking about how far can we be from the radio station and still hear it. So if we're further away from that, the further away we are, maybe we're not going to hear the radio station anymore. Does that make sense? Or maybe it's going to be breaking up where we're not going to hear it quite as well. So in this case, we actually might want to consider rounding that down to 112, even though in a lot of cases we would round it to 113. So key concept, just recapping for us about our formula for finding the area of a circle. Again, for our formula, we have to have the radius. If they don't give you the radius, if they give you the diameter, you have to find the radius in order for this formula to work. Remember, this r squared, that's not the same as 2 times r. You square something, take it times itself. 5 times 5 is 25. Different than 5 times 2 is 10, for example. So if we look at the do you know how number 4 and read our directions above that. Number 4 is asking what is the area of a circle with a radius of 8 inches. So again, we can underline some important information here. We want the area of a circle. We know the radius is 8 inches. So we're going to be using formulas for all these problems. So this one looks like we're trying to find the area. Why don't we use our area formula? So that'd be our starting point, and then we're just going to need to substitute some information in there, and then we can figure out our answer. So we substitute into our formula. The area is what we're trying to find. The directions here told us that we're going to use 3.14 for pi. The radius is 8. And don't forget that exponent there. Very important. Order of operations, we have multiplication and we have exponents. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So we're going to do the exponents before the multiplying, which is important concept if we don't have a calculator. So 8 squared means 8 times 8, which is 64. And then we take 3.14 times 64, which is 200.96. So 200.96 square inches would be the area of our circle. So number 5, excuse me, number 5 is kind of a backwards way from that. This one they're asking for what the radius is. They're telling us what the area is. So this is kind of like what we looked at earlier, so we'll kind of breeze through this one. Area is 28.26. Pi is 3.14. And we're trying to find the radius. So just like we did earlier, we can see over with the r, they're multiplying means we need to divide, okay? So 28.26 divided by 3.14, which actually comes out pretty nice as 9. Okay, that's r squared, that's the radius squared. So then to find the radius, we need to take the square root. We square root 9, which would be 3. So that means 3 feet can't be negative. 3 feet would be the radius of our circle. Number 6, they're asking for the area of a circle with the circumference of 25.12 meters. The issue here, we have our area formula. The area formula does not involve circumference. So circumference actually is not going to directly help us with our formula that we're trying to work with here. So we're going to have to go back to, in order to find the area, we need to find the radius. Well, to find the radius, we're going to use our circumference formula. So first of all, we have 2 circumference formulas we talked about earlier. I'm going to use the circumference formula that involves radius. So circumference is 25.12. Pi, we're going to use 3.14. And then to get going here, the 2 and the 3.14, we can multiply those together because they're right next to each other. Would be 6 and 28/100ths. And then we would need to divide. Good. So we divide by 6 and 28/100ths. In this case, that is just the radius, which comes out to be 4. So our radius is 4. Now that we know the radius is 4, I'm kind of going backwards order here, but I got it labeled, I've got it numbered. So the radius is 4. Now we can put that into our formula over here. So 3.14 times 4 squared. Technically, if you have a calculator, you can actually type that in your calculator all at once and it knows what to do. But again, don't get over dependent on the calculator. When you work that out, and then you should get 50.24. So 50.24 square meters would be the area of the circle.
So it's basically double.
And just to mention on number 7, they're telling us the diameter is 12 inches. They're asking for the area. So like I said earlier, if the diameter is 12, to find the area, we have to know what? The radius. So the diameter is 12 means the radius would be 6. And even though that's a simple calculation, I'm going to write that out to show how I got the 6. Okay. We'll multiply that out. We get an area as 113.04 square inches would be the area of that pizza. So that's a diameter of 12 inches. I want you guys to think about is if we had a pizza with a diameter of 6 inches, what its area would be. And then also on page 453, I'd like you to do 8 through 16. You can do 17 for extra credit.